Hello there, folks. This quick video today is going to talk about kind of formula tags and what happens when you disable devices to the formula tag, the logic. So I've got a couple examples here. Let me go to Crimson here, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. So in this example, I've got some tanks that I'm monitoring, and I've got a couple different methods here. I've got over here a flag tag right here called Formula OR. It's a flag tag, and it's a formula type tag. It's yellow, and if you notice here, it says complex code. So what I've done here is, if I hit the edit button, it brings up, and I'm basically running a simple compound OR statement here. I want to return this as a 1 if any of the overflow sensors in tank 6, 7, or 8 get tripped. I want to return this as a 1 value. Okay. Notice that I'm doing this at the tag level here. Okay. So that's what I'm doing on the formula OR. Let me go to the web browser and you'll see what I'm talking about. So here's the web page for that HMI. Here's the tanks, and we're just currently monitoring tank 6, 7, and 8, these 3 tanks right here in this application. So if I turn on the pumps over here, click the fill, you'll see that they're all filling up, and we're looking at 6, 7, and 8, and we're going to watch the overflow here. So when the overflow here trips any of them, you can see that I get an on state here because it's an OR statement. If this or this or this is tripped, this should be 1. So that's working fine. Looks great. Let me turn off the, well, I'll leave them on. So I've got that running. That logic works excellent. But here's where the problem can play with this logic is if any of my devices, 6, 7, and 8 in this case, get disconnected or not part of the equation, I want you to notice what happens to the logic of the formula on. So I'm using a tag. Let me go back to Crimson here. I'm using a function over here called a tag called ControlDevice 6, 7, and 8 here. And in Crimson team, in the lower right-hand corner, if you click on System down here, and in System, if you expand the functions tree, and then I think if you expand the comms device tree here, you're going to see there's a function here, enable device, this right here, and disable device, these 2 functions here. By the way, if you right click on these, you can always do show help info, and that'll open up the PDF document for those. But focusing on this tag here, if I go to the triggers tab, I just want you to know something. When it's on, I'm using this function, actually control device what I'm using here, a little bit deeper, but I'm using this function here to do this. And I want you to notice these numbers right here, kind of odd. Let me show you where I got that from. Back here in communications, under one protocol here, I'm currently looking at all these different tanks. And if we look at tank 6 here, click on it, notice the number right here. It says device 7, and also down here, Crimson will give you some information. If I happen to click on tank number 7, you can see that's device number 8. And if I click on tank number 8 here, that shows up as device number 9. So just remember that tank number 6, in this case, shows up here as device 7. So I go back here to data tags, and you can see control device 7 is the one I'm controlling, and the comma is a 1 or a 0, 1 to turn it on and 0 to turn it off. That's what I'm doing here. Okay. So if I go back to the web browser, and let's just go live here. So if I turn off, for instance, device number 7, I'll turn it off right here. Notice it's probably dim, but I got dashed lines because I'm no longer pulling that device, so these tags won't show up. But notice what happened to the logic here. It went dashed lines. The logic for that is no longer working correctly. Now, if I turn the guy back on here, click here, turn it back on, you'll see the logic comes back. If I turn off all my outputs over here, turn off my pumps, then you'll see that they stopped overflowing. If I want to drain them down, just for giggles, I can click the drain button and we can drain them down a little bit. But, all right, so anyway, just wanted to show that to you. Now, that's the problem with doing the logic in a formula tag at the tag level, you have a situation there where if one of the devices is not being pulled, well, then your logic doesn't work at all correctly. So what I did, I went another next step, is I created another flag tag here called OR statement. But this one, instead of doing the formula here as a complex code at the tag level, what I did in this case, teams, I took that same exact logic and I'm running it over here in programs. So I have a program here called programmed OR. That's the program that's being called right here. That's the program OR. So if I go back to programs here, it's the same exact code that's in here. However, here's the difference in running it in the program section is I can click on this properties tab right here, click on the properties tab, and on the properties tab, I can check this special button right here that says Run Anyway. And the Run Anyway feature will overwrite or ignore, I guess I'll say, devices that are not responding to my code. So by doing it there, back here at Crimson, let me go back to our application. So this is the other tag right here. This is the OR statement that's running in the C program. In this case, if I turn off the device here, notice I turned that off. That guy there went to dash lines, but this one went to off. Now, if I trip and fill my tanks up again where I get the overflow, let's see what happens here. Look, that logic worked. What if I go turn off another device? Let's say I turn off tank number 6 here. Notice dash lines. Look, the code is still working correctly here. I'm curious, what happens if I turn this guy off? Let's see. I didn't try this in my testing, so let's see. Interesting. That stays the last state. Maybe not the best thing in the world, but it stays the last state. So that's probably something you might want to investigate. But if I turn these back on, let me do this. Hold on. Let me go here. I'll turn this back off. Let's say if I turn these pumps off over here. So you see the logic didn't update because all the devices are off. But if I go turn on any of them, let's see if it fixes. Interesting, that didn't fix. What about this one if I turn it on? No? Okay, so hold on here. That's a triggered statement. Let's trip it. Let's see what it does here. So there, they're on. We'll turn them off. Oh, that's interesting. Look at that. I was expecting to get that to go to the off state. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so hold on. Let's test this a little further here. So I've got it on now. The other one's working correctly. Let's say that trigger this off. Okay, let's trip this. There, it worked. Let's turn it off. Well, that's interesting. That's a very interesting paradox there because I turned off two of the devices, or one of the devices, and it's working correctly. See that? That's working just fine right there. Let's turn off another one here, just for giggles. Let's turn off this one. Let's see what happens this time. Fill it up. They're all overflowing. Trip is on. Let's turn off the pumps. Interesting. So as long as one of them is correct, this logic works. If all the devices went offline, then the statement hangs because everything's off. So something to keep in mind there. That's an interesting paradox I've discovered there. So I'm doing that also. Just want to point that out to you guys. The thing here that I think I'm trying to positively tell you is that I think I prefer running my complex code in the programming section instead of running it sometimes here at the tag level, depending on the situation, but that's what I'm doing there. And then I also threw into this application get device status, which is another function you can use over here. And again, notice I'm looking at get device number 6 here. There's the number 7 that came from back here. If I click there, that's the number 7. It's coming from right there. And of course, tank number 7 here is device number 8, and tank number 8 is device number 9. So if I go over here, and you can see that's looking at that guy. If I go here, that's the next one, and if I go here, That's that guy there. So that is also being used here in this application. And if we go back to Crimson, actually go back to our live data, that is this tag right here, this get device status. I'm missing the S there. Anyway, so it's supposed to say the word status. Sorry about that, team. Did I spell that wrong on the tag level? I did statue. Sorry. Anyway, small technicality, but let's go back to here. All right, so let me just show you what the get device status is supposed to do. So if I turn off here, notice that went to 256 there and then to 0. The logic's still working here. What about this guy? If I turn it off, same exact thing. Yep. Now if I turn these back on, I get the data. It went to 1 and then it went to 257, which is the valid data. And then if I turn this one back on, it also works. So that is kind of the logic there, with those two functions being used. One more thing that I see a lot of in databases lately, that a lot of people built databases with many devices with future expansion. If I come over here to communications and say I click on tank number 7, for instance, right here, and if I disable that here in the Crimson program, notice the red X over here, I've disabled the device here completely. Let's go ahead and download this to the screen and let's see what happens here. So I've downloaded it to the screen. We'll go there and we'll go here, get this guy. Okay, so it's back up and running here. You can see that this says it's on, but it's dash lines because the database has that turned off. Now what happens if I trip my logic? Let's do the fill. And they're all overflowing. My tank's overflowing. We got an overflow here. We got nothing here or there. The logic is still working correctly here. What if I turn it off? Yep, everything's off. That works good. What if I disable this one? Let's go here and turn this off. All right, let's trip it again. Let's see what happens here. Okay, the logic still works good at the programming level. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. So I'll go ahead and let's do this. If I turn this guy on, get back my valid values, turn this off, and the logic works good. But this stays dash lines because I have disabled that device completely in the Crimson database. The other part of this that's important to notice is because that's disabled in the database, this tag, which is running its logic all at the tag level here, this guy right here is running this complex code here at the tag level. That code's not executing at all because that one device is disabled in the database. So I want you to think about that because I've seen a number of databases where we have complex code running here, which is normally fine, but then I'm seeing these programs where people have a number of devices disabled here. So that kind of really can maybe cause a problem with the HMI because that one device is disabled. So I would probably say it might be better to do all of your complex code in the programming section over here. That way you can, in the programming section, you can always utilize on the properties tab, you can utilize the RunAnyway function here. Okay, so let's go back here to communications. Let's go ahead and re-enable this guy here and say yes. And let's go ahead and download it to the screen. Let's see what happens when it comes back up here. All right, so everything's live, everything looks good. And of course, if I trip the thing, they're all filling up, overflows tripped. And now this logic works correctly because everything's on. But of course, the minute I turn one of the devices off or one of the devices gets disconnected or something times out, you can see why the original formula tag with the logic happening at the tag level might not be the best way to do it. And I prefer to promote to you guys to possibly use the C programming section for your complex code. Question might also be is, well, how can I find those instances of complex code? Well, in Crimson, you can always go to the File pull down and go to Utilities, and you can use this function right here called Programize Complex. And what that's going to do, it's going to compile Crimson, and anywhere it's got those formula tags in either graphics or also at the tag level, it'll create a C programming reference form. And you'll see in some of the databases I've seen hundreds of things. But anyway, I just thought to point that out to you. I don't know if I do that here. Let's just see what happens here. Click this. So it says errors. Let's look and see what kind of errors I have here. All right, so I must be doing something else in my code somewhere else here, but we will get rid of this stuff here. I don't really think I need this. It says was. Let's find out where this is used here. Right click, find usage, and it says whatever. So let's just do that. Boom, boom, boom. Do I still have errors? No more errors. Okay, good. We're back to where we were originally, and all looks good. So, that's that. Very interesting. Let's go look here. Let's see where this guy came from, because it's the same. No, it's not. This one here, look, came from the, so it took, when I did that complex, when I did that file utilities programized complex, I bet you if we go over here, look what it did. It put that to call that program. So it kind of circumvented what I was doing, but that's now going to call the program, which would allow me, to be honest with you, is to go here and click properties. And I could, you know what, let's leave this unchecked. Let's download this. Let's leave it unchecked and see what it does. I'm going to leave that unchecked on that function. So let's go back to Crimson, or back to our live demo. So we got everything on here. Currently we're overflowing, so everything's on. If I see if I turn one of these off. Look, noticed dashed lines. See that? So what if I go over here and say, take advantage of what I was just promoting, check the run anyway here. Let's download this to the screen. So now let's see what it does this time if I turn this off. Stays on, stays like it's supposed to. If I turn off the things over here so it's not overflowing anymore, they should have went to off. Ooh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Well, that's interesting. Why did that trigger? Why did that stay in the off position? Let's do this. Let's do this. Turn that off. Let's trip this. So these are all overflow. It says on. Let's turn it off. Huh. That's interesting. There's like a kind of a rising edge thing going on there. Anyway, I just thought maybe that demo is not the best, but I'm trying to show something here. That's interesting that hung like that. Anyway, just thought I'd make a video of how you can use some of these functions, control device over here, and IsDeviceOnline for some feedback. Yeah, I might share this with the folks at RedLion just for their review as well. But hey, thanks a lot, team. Have a great day. See y'all later.